My name is Winifred Cash, and at 29, I am a researcher who spends her life kneeling in mud, brushing fossils out of ancient soil, and staring at microorganisms through a microscope like they're constellations. People see me now, a woman in a crisp lab coat giving keynote speeches, and assume I was born into encouragement, raised by parents who nurtured curiosity. They couldn't be more wrong. My story really started when I was 9, standing alone in an empty house that no longer belonged to a family, because mine had left without me. But before the abandonment came the unraveling. When I was little, I lived outdoors more than I ever lived inside. I ran through mud puddles, pried open rotting leaves, collected pebbles like treasures, and dug in sand pits until my jeans tore at the knees. I still remember the exact moment my life shifted. My science teacher explained microorganisms, invisible creatures, living entire lives between grains of dirt, something no one could see, but real, existing, working, transforming the world. That idea lit my childhood on fire. I begged my parents for a picture book. I saved fallen leaves in jars. I even washed mud in bowls just to see if anything tiny would wiggle. But in a house ruled by academic elitism, curiosity was worthless unless it could be converted into test scores. Winifred, why must you ruin every dress? My mother scolded, pulling at the stained fabric. Girls shouldn't look like they crawled out of the ground. She said feminine, the way some people say obedient. She wanted me clean, quiet, composed, but dirt made sense to me. Dirt felt like something. Her values didn't bend, they pressed down, hard. At school, my grades were inconsistent, brilliant in some areas, disastrous in others, because I couldn't focus on lectures structured like monologues. I drifted. I imagined microscopic cities. I planned mud expeditions in my notebook. Teachers wrote comments like, Winifred loses concentration easily. Winifred daydreams. Winifred must apply herself. My mother apologized for me with polite smiles in front of teachers, then snapped the moment the door closed. Do you want to shame this family? Study harder. But for my brother, everything was different. He was the ideal child. Quiet, obedient, straight A brilliance. He got new clothes, balanced meals, tutors, praise, and attention. I got leftovers, his cast-offs, silence. Yet I loved him. He helped me with homework when he could, slid snacks into my hands because I never got any. We understood that in our house, resistance was dangerous. Survival meant quiet compliance. But compliance wasn't enough, not for a child like me. My parents gradually began treating me as if I were air. Their eyes moved around me, not at me. Their voices softened only when they spoke to him. One day, it felt like they simply turned away, and the world followed. Meals no longer included a plate for me. Laundry was your problem now. I was locked in my room to study, then left in silence for hours. It was during one of those isolations that I found a tablet propped on the floor beside the washing machine, a video playing on loop. How to do your own laundry. As though someone expected me to learn adulthood by accident. At first, I thought, if I do everything perfectly, they'll see me again. But perfection didn't matter. If I came home muddy, I was scolded. If I stayed clean, I was ignored. If I focused in school, I was invisible. If I struggled, I was a disappointment. Eventually, I stopped trying. And then came the worst day. A day I still remember by the color of the sunset, deep orange, bleeding into purple. I came home from school, hungry and tired, remembering that maybe today, they'd made dinner for me. Instead, on the living room table was a note. A single sheet of paper, no greeting, no signature. Your brother is going to a new school. We've made this house livable for you. It took me several readings for the meaning to land like a stone in my chest. They were gone. My parents had taken my brother, moved out entirely, and left me, a 9-year-old child, alone in a house, stocked only with pity and silence. A house made livable for me, as if I were a stray cat someone decided they could no longer feed. I cried until my stomach cramped. I cried until my throat burned. I cried because I believed it was my fault. Maybe if I hadn't played in mud, maybe if I'd paid more attention, maybe if I'd been more like my brother. But crying couldn't change anything. As darkness settled outside, fear rose in my chest. How does a child live alone? What about food? Money? Safety? And then I remembered something, an image like a lifeboat pulled from drowning memory. My grandmother. My mother's mother. A warm house. Pumpkin stew. A woman who once held my cheeks in both hands and said, "You're a bright girl, Winifred. You see the world in ways adults forget." I clung to that memory like breath. I tore through drawers, closets, cabinets, finally finding an old address book under the landline. Her last name. Her number. My fingers shook dialing for the first time in my life. One ring, two, three. Then, hello? Grandma, it's Winifred. She inhaled sharply. She knew. I explained everything in small, broken pieces. She didn't ask a single unnecessary question. I'm coming right now, she said, and hung up. 30 minutes later, headlights swept across the door. When she stepped inside and saw me, dirty, thin, eyes red, she froze. Her breath hitched. Then she opened her arms. I ran into them. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered into my hair. Look at you. Look at what they've done. You're safe now. Her warmth undid every knot inside me. Come on, she told me. Pack what you want. You're coming home with me. I looked back toward the empty rooms, the last ties to parents who treated me like a burden. Even after everything, part of me still hoped they'd walk through that door and say sorry. They didn't. I'm just a silly girl they didn't want, I murmured. No, Grandma said, her voice steady and fierce. You're free, and you're coming with me. I moved into her rural home, surrounded by open sky and quiet roads. My new school was small, almost cozy. Students were curious, not cruel. Teachers cared enough to actually explain things. No scolding, no comparing, no sighs of disappointment. For the first time in my life, I wasn't a problem. Near Grandma's house, cliffs and soft earth hid ancient secrets, fossil remnants, layers of old worlds, microorganisms buried in time. It felt like everything I ever loved was waiting for me. In that gentle place, I began to smile again, genuinely. And though I didn't know it then, every moment was shaping the woman I'd become. A woman strong enough to face the past when it finally came knocking. And it would come, sooner than I ever imagined. Grandma's house became the first place in my life where breathing didn't feel like a chore. There, mornings began with sunlight pooling on wooden floors and the smell of pumpkin stew simmering before noon. Evenings ended with cicadas humming outside my window while I scribbled down questions about the world, questions no one mocked me for asking anymore. As the years passed, something inside me steadied. Where my parents saw daydreaming, my grandmother saw focus. Where they saw mess, she saw curiosity. Where they saw failure, she saw potential waiting for oxygen. And oxygen was exactly what I got. In that quiet rural school, my teachers encouraged me. You love research? Then research, but finish your homework first. Being interested in something is good. Don't let anyone take that from you. Those words reshaped me. I learned discipline not through fear, but through trust, balance, structure. And slowly my grades shifted upward, not because I wanted to please anyone, but because I finally understood how I learned. My grandmother noticed too. She had always known how to read people. So when she discovered the truth that my parents had left me behind without a cent, she confronted my mother directly. I never learned exactly what she said, only that her voice must have been calm and razor sharp, because afterward my parents begrudgingly transferred the minimal legal support. It wasn't much, it barely covered basic supplies, but Grandma didn't complain. She simply worked harder, smiled softer, and made room in her life for me in every way that mattered. When it came time for high school, then college applications, then graduate school, the only real obstacle was money. But scholarships filled the gaps, one after another. I worked tirelessly, not for approval, not for perfection, but because learning felt like breathing. After 4 years, I finished my bachelor's degree. 4 more, and I completed my master's and doctorate. I still remember the night I defended my dissertation, how I stood in a room full of scholars, speaking with a confidence younger me never knew she could possess. When they told me I had passed, I almost looked behind me, expecting to see someone else. But no, that strong, capable woman was me. And the next morning, when I called Grandma, she cried. Not out of sadness, but out of pride. Real, unconditional pride. The kind I used to imagine existed only in books. Soon after, I was offered a position at one of the country's most respected research institutes, the kind of place my parents bragged about but never imagined I would set foot in. The work was brutal. Long hours, endless data, fieldwork in extreme climates. But I loved it with a kind of hunger that felt ancient. I wasn't just studying microorganisms. I was listening to them, learning their stories, unraveling secrets millions of years old. Then came the discovery. During an overseas fossil excavation, I found something unusual, a rare microorganism embedded in a sand stratum where it shouldn't have existed. That anomaly became the thread I pulled until an entire evolutionary narrative began to unfurl. I wrote my paper with trembling hands, submitted it, waited. A month later, I received the email. My research had won a major award from a prestigious scientific society. Suddenly, my name was on news headlines. Cameras flashed at airports. People in the field called me the powerhouse. I was flown to conferences, pressed into dresses chosen by stylists, asked to speak on television about things I still preferred to write in my notebook. And through it all, my grandmother watched proudly from home. After returning from the award ceremony, I was exhausted, jet-lagged, emotionally stretched thin between interviews and panels. When I arrived back at the Institute, all I wanted was to dive straight into my other projects. Instead, the director insisted I take a few days off. "A mind like yours needs rest," he said, tapping his temple. "Go recharge. You've earned it." Earned it! That word carried so much weight, because for 20 years, no one in my blood family had ever said anything like that to me. So I did something simple, something grounding. I went home, to the one place where the world had always made sense. Grandma opened the door before I even knocked. She was smaller than I remembered, age tightening around her shoulders like a shawl, but her eyes still had that gentle spark. "You've been busy," she said, ushering me inside. "Not really. The non-research stuff is just tiring." "I saw you on TV. Winifred, that dress. My goodness, you look so elegant." I groaned. "Please don't remind me. They did everything. Picked the outfit, did my hair, my makeup. I barely recognized myself." "Well, you looked beautiful, but I prefer you like this." She tapped my cheek. "No makeup, no fuss." I smiled and dipped my spoon into her pumpkin stew, the exact flavor etched into my childhood memories. It tasted like home. I settled onto the sofa with tea. Grandma moved about the kitchen with a slow but steady rhythm, and for the first time in months I felt my body loosen, every tense muscle unclenching. Then the doorbell rang. Grandma paused. "That's odd." This was a rural neighborhood. People didn't ring doorbells unless they were delivering packages, and Grandma didn't order anything online. I listened to her open the door. 1 second passed. 2, 3. No footsteps returning, no friendly greetings. Only voices. Low, strained. My chest tightened. I stood and walked toward the entrance. Just as I turned the corner, I heard my name. "Winifred," a woman said, her tone too sweet to be real. "My goodness, I'm so glad we found you." My grandmother stepped aside, revealing two figures I had not seen in 20 years. My mother, my father, aged, haggard, but smiling with that same cold, performative warmth they used when guests visited. They held their hands out toward me, as if expecting an embrace. My stomach twisted. What were they doing here? How did they find me? And after 2 decades of nothing, why now? They both took a step forward. "Winifred," my father said, voice trembling with something that wasn't emotion but desperation. "We've come to celebrate your success. Our daughter, the award-winning scientist." My mother added, "Yes, we're family, aren't we? And now that you're doing so well, it's time we—" I raised a hand. "Stop." Their smiles faltered. "Don't come inside," I said quietly. "Just tell me what you want." And just like that, the reunion they imagined shattered. The past had found me. But I wasn't a scared 9-year-old anymore. I was Winifred Cash, and I wasn't afraid of them, not even a little. The moment I told my parents not to step inside, something shifted in the air. Their smiles froze, still stretched across their faces, but hollow now, brittle like porcelain cracking beneath heat. My mother blinked at me, stunned. My father's fingers twitched at his side, as if he couldn't decide whether to reach for me or retreat. Neither option mattered. I wasn't letting them cross that threshold. "Winifred," my mother began again, forcing a laugh that evaporated instantly. "Sweetheart, don't be so tense. We came all this way. Isn't this how family greets each other?" "Family?" I repeated, my voice almost too calm. "You came here because you found out about my award, not because you remembered you have a daughter." They flinched at the word daughter, like they'd forgotten what it meant. "My father tried first. We only want to reconnect. We thought, since you're successful now—" "Successful?" I cut in. "You don't know anything about my life." "We know enough," my mother snapped, the facade slipping. "You're respected. You're well-known. That means authority, influence." Her eyes gleamed, not with pride, but calculation. "So, of course, now is the time for us to come together again, to help each other, Help! The moment she said it, everything snapped into place. They weren't here for me. They were here because they needed something. What happened? I asked, not out of concern, but curiosity. Why now, after 20 years? What do you want? My father swallowed hard. Then everything spilled out. It started with my brother. He left, my father stammered. Your brother abandoned us, just disappeared. He rejected everything we taught him. My mother's voice cut in sharply. He was attending a top university, one we sacrificed everything for, but he fell in with the wrong crowd. People with anti-intellectual values. They poisoned him, convinced him our expectations were controlling. She scoffed. As if discipline is oppression. I stared. You mean he finally saw what the rest of the world saw? They ignored that. He walked out in his final year, my father continued. Left a note saying not to look for him. So my brother ran. I couldn't blame him, but my parents weren't done. After he left, my mother said, her tone wobbling, we struggled, emotionally, financially. We made some mistakes. Mistakes? I echoed. My father rubbed his forehead. Your mother was disciplined at work. Students complained she was too strict, too pushy. She was harassing them, my grandmother muttered behind me. I didn't disagree. And I, my father added, voice cracking, I was unfairly accused by coworkers. They said I treated them poorly. They said I belittled them. Some even falsely claimed harassment. It was ridiculous. My mother whispered, lawyers are involved now. I looked at them. Two people who once strutted with superiority, now withered down to desperation. Their pride had collapsed in on itself. And now, my father said, taking a shaky step toward me, now we need your support. We're family, Winifred. You've grown into an accomplished woman. We need you to help us through this crisis. Ah, there it was, not even wrapped in subtlety. You need money, I said bluntly. They froze. And reputation management, maybe even legal help. You want to use me the way you used my brother? No, my mother insisted. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. We're your parents, she shouted suddenly, the mask fully gone. Your duty is to support us now. Something in me quieted, settled. Not rage, clarity. Duty? I said softly. You left me alone in a house at 9 years old. My mother's mouth opened, shut, opened again. That was different, she hissed. How? Silence. I took a slow breath, feeling a calm so sharp it could cut through steel. You say we're family, but you treated me like a burden. A mistake, a shadow. You didn't feed me, didn't speak to me, didn't look at me. I stepped closer. And then you abandoned me. You took my brother and disappeared. You left a note. A single tear slid down my mother's cheek. Not from remorse, but humiliation. We came back, she whispered. Doesn't that count? No, I said. You came because you're broke. My father's face reddened. How dare you, after everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done? I interrupted. Grandma raised me. Grandma fought for me. Grandma made sure I stayed alive. My mother shook her head frantically. Winifred, calm down. You're overreacting because you're overwhelmed. I laughed. Actually laughed. A sound with no warmth at all. Overreacting? You show up after 20 years and demand to live with me? To depend on me? You treat me like your backup plan. Their panic began curdling into anger. Winifred, my father barked, pack your things. We'll go to your home now. We'll fix this as a family. Pack my things? As if I were a child again, as if they still had authority. I stared at them, really stared, and felt absolutely nothing. You don't get to tell me what to do, I said, with ice in my voice. I'm not your daughter. I'm just someone you abandoned. My mother gasped, hand over her chest. You can't mean that. Oh, I do, and I'll say it clearly. You are strangers to me, strangers demanding help. My father looked around, suddenly aware of neighbors watching from yards. You're making a scene, he hissed. You are, I said, and if you raise your voice one more time, I'll call the police. They ignored me, or maybe they simply couldn't believe they no longer had control. My mother lunged toward the doorway. Let us in. We need to talk inside. I stepped backward and slammed the door. My father pounded on it. Winifred, open this door. My grandmother's voice floated calmly from behind me. Sweetheart, lock it. I did. We closed every door and window as their shouting escalated, their words turning uglier, their desperation spilling into threats and accusations. And then, a distant siren, growing louder. Through the curtains, I saw flashing lights painting the front yard. The police car pulled up. Officers stepped out, hands near their belts, assessing the situation. My parents immediately changed their faces, smiling, stuttering, pretending everything was fine. I opened the door just enough to speak. "Officers," I said evenly. "These two abandoned me 20 years ago. This is the first time I've seen them since. They're trying to force their way into the house." A murmur spread among the neighbors like ripples through water. My parents froze. The officers separated them, asking questions. My parents tried to charm their way out of the situation, but the story was already out. The neighbors watched. My parents wilted. Eventually, the officers escorted them away from the property. And the second the police car disappeared down the road, the air felt lighter, cleaner, like a storm had broken. Grandma touched my shoulder gently. "You were strong," she said. No, I was free. For the first time in my life, truly free. But the past wasn't finished with me yet. There was one more person I never expected to see again, and he would arrive sooner than I thought. The days after the confrontation were strangely quiet, almost too quiet, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for the next tremor. I kept expecting my parents to reappear, to shout from the street, to send letters or messages dripping with blame. But nothing happened. No calls, no visits, not even a rumor of them lingering nearby. It seemed the police presence and the neighbors' sharp, disapproving eyes had been enough to push them back into whatever chaos they had come from. For a brief moment, I let myself relax. I cooked with Grandma, weeded her garden, took walks along the ridges where the earth still held the ghosts of ancient forests. I even slept more than 5 hours a night, something I had nearly forgotten how to do. But peace never stays long for people like me. It always arrives with something attached. 3 days after the police incident, the doorbell rang again. I felt my stomach drop. My grandmother paused, setting down her knife as she chopped sweet potatoes for a stew. We exchanged a look, tired, wary, ready for another battle. "I'll get it," I said quietly. I braced myself for the faces I never wanted to see again. But when I opened the door, the sunlight revealed a figure I couldn't mistake, no matter how many years had passed. Tall, sun-kissed skin, long hair tied loosely at the back, a familiar, gentle curve to his smile. My brother. "Hey," he said softly, voice warm but tentative. "Long time no see, Winnie." The sound of that old nickname hit me harder than any insult my parents ever threw at me. I didn't speak. I simply stepped aside, and he walked in as if he had never left, except everything about him was different, older, freer, weathered by real life instead of our parents' suffocating expectations. Grandma rushed from the kitchen the moment she heard his voice. "Oh," she cried, hands flying to her mouth. "You're home! You're finally home!" He hugged her, really hugged her, and for a moment the room felt too small to contain all the years lost between us. We moved into the living room, the same place where my parents' voices had once echoed. Now it felt gentler, filled with the smell of sweet potatoes and old memories. When we sat down, my brother took a deep breath. "I came to apologize," he said. No hesitation, no dancing around it, just truth, raw and immediate. "For what?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "For everything," he said. His hands trembled slightly on his knees. "For not seeing what you were going through, for not understanding how badly they neglected you, for letting myself be the favorite without realizing it, for leaving without looking back." He lifted his eyes to me, filled with guilt, regret, and something that shattered me more than anger ever could. "I should have protected you. I should have tried, and when I left, I should have come for you." I swallowed hard. "Why now?" My voice cracked. "Why come back after all these years?" He leaned back, exhaling. "When I left the country, I wanted to disappear, to live, to breathe. I traveled everywhere: Italy, Spain, Morocco, Chile. I worked whatever jobs I could find, photography mostly, taking pictures of things that felt real, finally real." He laughed softly at himself. "One day in Rome, I saw you on the news. You were accepting an award, and you mentioned Grandma in your speech." My breath caught. "That was when I realized," he continued, "that you'd grown into everything they couldn't see in you, that you survived what they did, that you became this incredible woman without them." He swallowed, his voice turning thick, and I realized I needed to come home, not as the brother who left you behind, but as the brother who finally understands. I expected anger to rise, the same anger I felt toward my parents, but it didn't. Instead, memories surfaced. The brother who shared snacks with me when I had none, who helped me with homework even when he was drowning in his own, who spoke to me when no one else did. Back then, he was just a child too. A child under the same roof, controlled by the same oppressive expectations. I'm not angry with you, I whispered. I never was. You were the only one who ever talked to me. That mattered. He covered his eyes with one hand, breath trembling. That was when Grandma appeared in the doorway, holding a plate. Her candied sweet potatoes. The exact recipe she made when we were children. Soft, caramelized edges. Warm, familiar scent. Here, Grandma said, voice gentle. Let's eat together, like we used to. We both laughed, broken, grateful, overwhelmed, and reached for the dish at the same time. This tastes exactly the same, my brother said, his voice thick. It's perfect, I replied. Salty, Grandma huffed. I must have overcooked the syrup. But we knew the truth. The salt wasn't from the food, it was from our tears. We were a family again, not the one my parents tried to force, not the one they abandoned, but the one we built from the remnants, stitched together with truth and apology, and the kind of love that chooses you again and again. Later that evening, after my brother showered and Grandma had gone to bed, he told me the rest. Our parents had lost everything. Her job, gone. His research career, destroyed. Their reputation, shattered. They were working low-wage jobs now, reporting to supervisors they once mocked. Humiliation had finally taught them what empathy never did. I listened without sympathy, not cruelty, just closure. They got what they earned, my brother said quietly. And for the first time in my life, I agreed. In the weeks that followed, my brother and I rebuilt our bond. We visited Grandma together. We shared meals. We caught up on missing years. And as I watched him laugh again, freely, I realized something. I hadn't just survived my childhood, I had escaped it, and I had created a life defined not by abandonment, but by resilience, by choice, by passion, by a family I claim for myself. My name is Winifred Cash, and I am no longer the girl left behind in an empty house. I am the woman who walked forward and never looked back.